And one question before we start, do we have anybody online?
We do have a Councilman Pulver is watching.
Great. Okay, welcome to tonight's Planning Commission meeting. It is the January 15th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting for North Ogden City. I'm Vice Chairman Brandon Mason. I'll be conducting this meeting at least up until the time that our Chairman, Commissioner Thomas, arrives. The meeting will be started as it normally is with a thought or invocation, I guess, by myself, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Webb. I'll go ahead and offer an invocation. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful this evening that we can meet together as members of the community and as people who serve the community and those who are interested in the goings-on of North Ogden City. We ask for guidance and wisdom in all that we do and help us to have a spirit of understanding one with another, that we may have the best interest of all the stakeholders involved, and that we can be diligent and mindful and thoughtful in all of our actions. And we ask for those favors, blessings, and anything else that we stand in need of at this time, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, members of the commission, I'd intended on having some opening remarks tonight anyway. I think I'm going to hold those off. The reason I was going to express my appreciation for Commissioner Thomas, and I wanted to do it at the beginning of the meeting because more people listen at the beginning of the meeting than they do at the end. And I just wanted all those in attendance online to hear that. And given that Commissioner Thomas isn't here, I guess I'll just hold off on that and let staff take some of that at the end, and I'll save my thoughts for the end regarding that. Let's just go ahead and get started with our agenda. We start with our consent agenda items, which are pretty standard, it looks like. First of all, we noted that I did see Commissioner Bailey in the hall, so I would assume he was going to be joining us momentarily. Other than that, we have not yet heard from Commissioner Thomas. The rest of the commissioners are in attendance. Item number 2, had anyone had a chance to review the minutes from our previous meeting?
I did. I do have a correction on those. It's not particularly maybe important, but we're talking paragraph 1, 2, 3, paragraph 3 on page 5. I would just like it to maybe end after enhance the city's aesthetic. This is a comment attributed to me. The rest of that comment is either erroneous or like I'm not the one who mentioned Cherry Springs Villas. I'm actually not familiar with that. Not an important correction, but I don't know. Do we make ones like that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Does anybody object to the correction made by Commissioner Green?
So like aesthetic and then period.
So the recommendation is that after the word aesthetic, there'd be a period. And then did you want any clarification on the Cherry Creek?
I believe, was that Commissioner Nancarroll? Was that your input?
Not ringing any bells.
Okay, then I'm unclear.
Should we just strike to that last?
Strike the last bit
that-
and the.
Say that it was mentioned, maybe, just leave it vague. I haven't
Yeah,
read
we
the
could say
comments
was
specifically.
mentioned. I do think someone mentioned it. It just wasn't me because I remember thinking, oh, I need to look that up.
Which paragraph is that one?
It's paragraph 3, that begins with Commissioner Green and
And then just end after aesthetic.
yeah, because attract more residents wasn't what my thought process was on that one.
Okay, I've written that down and we'll grab that from the minutes and recording. Thank you.
Great. Okay, aside from that correction, do we have any other recommended corrections, or can we get a motion to approve?
We need a second.
We have not yet had a first motion. She just made that,
Oh, just that correct.
she just made that correction. Yeah.
Make a motion that we approve the December 18th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Voice vote for all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. Item number 3 is ex parte communications or conflict of interest to disclose. Now would be the time if on an agenda item tonight, we have a conflict of interest or any ex parte communications that have happened outside this meeting. Okay, given that there were none, let the records show there were none. we'll move right into item number 4, which we ask for public comments. We'd ask if your public comment regards item number 5, that you would hold off and save the comment for that, so it's more pertinent to that specific item. But if you have any general comments for us, we'd be interested in hearing those now. Nobody online? Okay, we can turn it over to the meat of the meeting and get into item number 5, which is consideration and action on an administrative application, preliminary plat approval of the Mountain Grove Estate subdivision located approximately 2540 North Mountain Road. And we're going to hear from Ryan Nunn.
Thank you, Commissioner Mason. Yes, this is a preliminary plat for a 3-lot subdivision, Mountain Grove Estates. A little bit of background is that currently this is one large lot. There's a home and a detached garage that's there. On the north side is just kind of a large field with some old sheds. The applicant, Mr. Daly, he applied to do 3 lots. It's currently in the R1 12.5 zone. And so his preliminary plat meets those standards of meeting the square footage requirements, the lot frontages. In regards to the existing home and detached garage, so with the subdivision, this required dedication of Mountain Road to meet the full 80 foot right of way. And so that does create an existing nonconformity for the home. The detached garage can have, I think there's an awning that can all be removed so it can meet the setbacks for the zone, but the home will be, I think, about 7 feet from the property line.
From the backup sidewalk.
Or back a sidewalk, thank you. And the applicants worked really closely with Eric Casperson, our city engineer, and me in our planning department on working through what the right-of-way dedication will look like and everything that needs to be done really for that lot 3 and those existing
Maybe not.
structures. So the city does feel comfortable, or as staff, we do feel comfortable that, you know, even though it's creating a nonconformity, as long as it won't, the condition is that it won't increase, right? The nonconformity, that this can be approved. As well, this will be Mountain Road, and so as the curb and gutter and the sidewalk go in, it'll be a 6-foot sidewalk for the trail system along Mountain Road. And so staff does approve conditional approval that it meets our TRC comments, the city engineer's review memo. Another condition is there is a old kind of concrete pond in the back. So along with the removal of some of the sheds, that Pineview recommended removal of that since it is kind of straddling property lines. And so with those conditions, staff does recommend approval. And I can take any of your questions or comments, and we do have the applicant here with us as well.
Okay, do we have any questions for Ryan?
Ryan, real quick, I think you said recommend removal of the pond and the sheds that are sort of on property line. Is that, it was recommend the correct word? We don't have necessarily any say that says you have to do this. Is that?
This could
Yes,
be a
Scott.
condition of approval,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And typically, especially with lots 1 and 2, what happens is you bring those 2 into full conformity. So if you've got a shed that's sitting there and it cannot conform to the subdivision requirements, which is constructed on property line, if it's a substantial structure, sometimes that's, you know, a call that you make. But as planning commission, what you're trying to do is bring everything into conformity as much as possible. So eliminate the shed on the garage that was crossing through the property line between lot 2 and 3. Pull that off, make sure that it's set back and height meets the requirements. And we did double check with Pineview that concrete pond that looked like it might have been some sort of reservoir type of structure or something they utilized in the past. They said that was not our pond, and so it's just as kind of like a, I don't want to call it a nuisance item, but something to clean up as part of the subdivision process. That was our recommendation. So you're starting kind of from as blank of a slate as possible. And then with the house and how close it is to the property line, there really aren't good planning guidelines on what to do in these cases. I mean, you have an old existing home that it is where it is, right? And you've got a property owner who has enough land and width in order to subdivide. It doesn't rise to the level that we would say this, you cannot subdivide because you're creating this nonconformity. But what we can say and our recommendation is the house can exist as it is, but you can't go and increase the footprint or size of that house. You can rebuild in place. We'd even offer, if the insurance companies or anybody has an issue with that, we'll offer like a calamity rebuild letter. So if it burns down, you can put it back where it was, and you don't have to make it conform. If the house were to go under substantial changes, we would say you unfortunately have to pull it down. You have to put it back at the standard setback of any other structure. And that it is 6.7 feet indicated to the roadway dedication, and your sidewalk sits, inside that roadway dedication. So you're essentially right about 7 or 7.5 feet from the bottom of the stoop to the beginning of the sidewalk point, which is close. And there's a few other homes in North Ogden, old existing homes that we've got are real close to back of curbs. So it's not unprecedented, but it's just one of those items that, we want to offer the ability to subdivide and do something with their land, but this is an existing condition that will then just essentially be there.
And this does not include the creation of Mountain Road right there, right? That's existing Mountain Road, right?
It is, but Mountain Road's asphalt right now is, it's not exactly in the center, but the current, I don't know how much asphalt there's, I'm going to get this wrong, call it, 40 feet of asphalt is sitting in the center. So there's a right-of-way expansion that needs to happen. Mountain Road is an 80-foot right-of-way total. So some on the west side, some on the east side. So there is this piece of property dedication on the east side that'll happen that gives up, makes it their half essentially of their 40 feet on the east side of the center line of that road. So if you can look there where it says 4-rod wide territory road, 33 feet, the current asphalt today is sitting just a little bit east of center. And then they've got that dedication portion that they need to dedicate. And then they'll build the curb. If you went out and looked at it from the existing subdivision to the south, there isn't a curb line that comes around the corner out of the cul-de-sac. And you can see 35.3 to existing back of curb if you look right there. That's the existing curb line. And it won't quite perfectly align with where the right of way is. So the curb will sort of bump out. It's going to actually come a little bit further west, but we'll just grab that curb. We would have them grab that curb as part of the improvement and bring it around and join the sidewalk.
Okay, before we have the applicant speak to us, I'm gonna have a couple remedial questions. For one, I wasn't able to do any research on this because just so staff knows, there's no link to the packet from the website.
Yes.
And I struggled with that for a bit.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
When we
but-
changed the website, so the way it works now is you click into the agenda, and then on the agenda, there are links in each item that go to the packet component.
Got it. Yeah,
Sorry.
I see that now, and I figured that out in the meeting. I hadn't figured that out in advance, which means catching me off guard, and I'm going to be asking questions I maybe would have
Please
looked
do.
at. So is the area zoned for residential then? The reason
Yep.
we are completely in a residential zone.
Yep.
And then what is the strategy for 2,700 or is it 2,600? Is it? So I think this property is just when you come up 2,600 and you hit Mountain Road, we're just to the south, across the road and just to the south, right? What's the strategy for 2,700?
No change essentially. So that will
I mean,
happen.
long-term in the general plan, was that
Oh.
to continue on?
That's an interesting question
Okay.
to consider. It
Okay.
doesn't continue on, as far as I know, unless the city owns a big chunk of the property that's on the other side, on the east side. So a piece owned by Pineview, and then the city owns some property to the east further of that. So 2600 doesn't continue. It'll be an intersection improvement at Mountain Road and 2600, as far as I know, on our transportation plan. But you won't get any like west side curb gutter sidewalk improvements at that intersection, because those will all happen when the west side develops.
Yeah, I'm just concerned, and I'm thinking out loud, okay? But I'm just concerned if lot one is, needs any kind of setbacks, meaning that it would be the intersection of 2600, and
No.
it's just a question I'm asking.
No, so you can see I got the map pulled up
Yeah,
here.
that's great.
This is a Pineview pump house.
Okay,
So it's not going anywhere.
and that
The-
whole plot of land is.
Yeah, everything to the south is kind of what we're talking about.
Okay, so if 2600 continued on, it'd go right through that Pineview area, okay,
Yeah.
or some, okay,
So any access to this ground would likely come from up here, closer to where the canal goes under Mountain Road, along with the access off of 1550 East into the area,
can you?
which is not currently offered for sale or for development.
Yeah,
City
there's not a
owns
lot
it.
to get to up there anyway, right? I mean, you run into a mountain,
That's where the Frisbee golf park
Yeah.
is right now.
okay. And then as long as you have that up there, could you show the pond that you're recommending be demolished?
It's under these trees right
Okay.
here.
Or is there any concern of, any existing irrigation or anything under there that would, I mean, the pond's got to go because it stretches over the lot, right? But.
Right. Nope.
Okay, those are my preliminary questions. Thanks. Anybody else have any questions for Ryan or Scott, John? Okay, would the applicant like to address us? You don't have to. This is your moment. Okay.
This is your moment.
This is your moment. Okay, let me ask you this, though. Was there anything in the proposal that that you objected to, meaning the removal of the structures at all? If those were a condition of approval? Come on, if you wouldn't mind coming up. Yeah,
We gave you a choice.
we'll give you a choice, but please come up. And there's an officer in the back of the room that will.
Yeah.
The pond, I'm not sure what that was used for. It looks very crude, it's just almost like a homemade swimming pool or something. I was trying to figure out what it was, and
It's empty.
yeah, it's
Skateboarding.
empty, and if you want me to remove it, I'll remove it. Doesn't add any value, and it doesn't look like, a Pineview would have put it in, because it's not up to, it just looks like somebody came in and did it swiftly. So, and the little lean-to on the side of the garage, I was kind of planning on taking that off anyway, so that's not a big deal. And so I think I'd also like to thank Ryan and Scott and Eric. This is the first time I've ever done this, and I didn't realize how involved this is to try to get this through. And they've been very patient and met with me a lot. So I'd like to say thank you to them as
you.
well.
Right. As long as you're on public record, can we get you to state your name and
Oh,
resident?
Richard Daly. And what was the second
Where
part?
you live?
Oh, I live in Draper, Utah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for our applicant? Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, any discussion on this? Any other, anything anybody's had they're batting around on this?
No, I think I would just add that it's fairly normal for buildings, properties and whatnot to have non-conforming uses as time goes on, as codes change and ordinances change. So I know that was kind of one of the interesting things of this project, but as long as the applicant is aware of the ramifications of not being able to modify the residence to a certain degree, I think just so everyone knows, that's sort of an industry standard across development and construction.
Does anybody have any concerns with the conditions or any recommendations to tack some conditions onto the?
I think they've covered under the conditions of approval that were recommended in the staff report and the engineering report. I think they've covered everything. The removal of the concrete pond, 6-foot tall fence is required along the easterly boundary. Fencing is to be maintained and kept in good repair. And then I think it was in the staff report or the technical review that it required taking off part of a cover on the back of the garage or
That's the
something to meet the setback requirement for a shed or
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
an accessory building. So I think it was all covered if,
Yep.
um,
And we didn't mention the fencing specifically, but that is, has been consistent along the open portions of the canal that we have required at the time of subdivision, a note to be put on the plat that requires a 6-foot fence. And the time that we collect that fence is at building permit prior to certificate of occupancy. So if the developer owner sells those lots, that becomes a condition that runs with the land and ends up as something they need to clarify with the buyer of that property, that they have to fence their portion at the time that they build a house. So.
And they won't get certificate of occupancy without that. Great.
they won't.
Good.
I think it's pretty, pretty detailed and contained within the conditions of approval in the staff report. Unless you guys had something else to add.
No, I think it'll be nice to get the property cleaned up a little bit. It sounds like a great project and I'm glad our staff was so helpful with your first go around. It's awesome.
Given that I see nothing that we're debating here, does anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat of the Mountain Grove Estates subdivision, subject to the conditions from the engineer's report, the technical review committee memo, and the conditions noted in the staff report.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Nancarrow, a second by Commissioner Bailey. Any further discussion before I call for a vote? Okay, Commissioner Watson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey?
Yes.
Commissioner Webb?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Nancarrow?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Great. Well, that was a short agenda tonight. Brings us almost, we kind of winded down here where we call for public comments again, I guess. Did I put that out of order? No, public comments,
No, you did it right.
meat of the meeting and then more
Fantastic
public
job.
comments. Yeah, it's a
Blue
lot of
ribbon.
training. Well, this is where I wanted to express my appreciation to someone, but I guess I'm not public, really.
No additional public.
Nobody here, okay? Remarks from planning commissioners.
You know, I did have one remark, and we were kind of talking about it informally before the meeting, but I know the last several meetings, like at the end, we've had some philosophical discussions about perhaps some changes that we would like to see or some future planning for certain parts of either Washington Boulevard or Barker Park or, you know, the Kings Plaza. And we've had a lot of discussions about it, but in our, I guess, our process at the end of a meeting, we kind of always leave it hanging and we never follow up. But we were talking about maybe it would be appropriate to, you know, maybe have a little work session to hammer out some of the details of that and for the future, if you get,
Yeah.
any or all are up for that.
Yeah.
And because I think at this point, it's like if we don't get something down in an ordinance change or a rezoning or whatever we need to do for that overlay and working with staff, that you know, it's going to drive us instead of us driving that. So
Yeah.
it's just my 2 cents. But we've had a lot of great ideas and discussions. We just,
Yeah.
we're leaving it hanging.
Yeah, to add to that, I think that, you know, the planning department and John and his dad and, you know, the different training that we've had, I think that it might be nice to have for some of our required training for the year, a work session that would maybe be even tactical with some examples of, hey, this is what we're looking at here. What is within our scope and authority to plan so that we can help with that.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, the videos that Ryan had sent out for us to watch with training, not the one we did together, but there was a comment made in there by the ombudsman from the state who had said the number one thing a planning commission can do is to just keep working on constantly improving the city code. And I thought that was really fascinating and interesting. And that's why, yes, I think that would be maybe a good idea just to see what, you know, are there things we feel like we do need to push forward that we're not?
A little more formally than
Yes.
just talking about it,
Yes.
because otherwise somebody's going to bring a project before us and then we're going to have to, we're not going to have the pieces in place to implement some of the ideas that we have, you know, it'll be driving us instead.
Mhm. And to start with some of those hot button or hot spots in North Ogden, I think is great. So I agree with both the concept and the timeline.
Is there a particular night or just a different Wednesday, like in between, or would work for you guys?
Yeah.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll
mean,
give us
staff,
some-
so I've written that down for staff to schedule, and I'll give you an update on our 2025 goals and what we were thinking. We did a session on that with the department heads, and I'll give that as part of my update.
I'm just thinking about that idea. I mean, this meeting's appropriate for that activity anyway, right? And no matter when we gather, we have to have the public invited at least, right? That, so it's not like we
That's a
can
good
just go
point.
meet up in someone's basement and do this. Like we either have to, in my opinion, I mean, we can meet off site,
Do it-
but we
do
have
it
to,
do the same thing during a regular scheduled meeting.
right. I mean, there's no, we've had a couple meetings where we have not had an agenda, so we haven't met.
Yeah.
Maybe that when that
That's a
happens,
great
we,
idea.
And an
So-
open meeting, agreed,
and-
like has to be.
Yeah.
and for those who have, other things going on, you're maybe a basketball coach somewhere or
Mhm.
something, then you've hopefully got this Wednesday night reserved, so it might fit into our schedules better. So-
That's a great idea.
Yeah, those meetings we've had where we put some tables down,
Right.
you
yes,
know what I
it's
mean?
like
Those
this,
are the, yeah, something in a little bit more of a,
Although I feel so empowered, like up here or above
Oh,
everyone.
I really would love that. I feel often like I can't see you guys.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna talk ideas, it would be really
More of a
nice.
Round table,
Yeah.
you can lay out
Yeah.
the map, you know.
I'd like to disagree with you eye to eye. You know what I'm saying?
Like a real man.
We could,
Okay, that sounds great.
we could, take a regular meeting, and some cities do it where it's like, hey, this meeting, we don't talk about approvals unless we have to.
Mhm.
And this meeting, we do the approvals, and then you could use the space across the way. We could set the tables up in here and just
Yeah.
make it
So,
work.
I think a lot of times we get thinking we're like this approval board or this line of judges. And if we're not really putting our brains together and planning, then we're not really doing our best job. Right.
And I think collectively, we have a lot of great ideas that we've
Yes.
thrown out
Mhm,
there,
mhm.
you know.
Collectively, Brandon, not specifically.
that great, but collective.
I'm going to tell you about the time I tried calling the Old Town North Ogden, the avenues of North Ogden. I was stoned and mocked and scorned for quite a while.
That was not by me.
Just thought you were stoned.
It's not by me. I supported that comment.
Yeah.
Public record.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea, John, and, maybe one meeting for that, or maybe
Yeah.
the next, secondary meeting of the month or something, maybe, talk about like the economic or commercial vision for the future, or something, something along those lines.
So
Because
could,
I know that, the staff has probably been putting a lot of thought into that as well.
yeah, I mean, could we use the next non-approval meeting we have, or is that pushing it too far?
I think we should, I agree, but I don't know what's on the agenda.
We've got to have,
coming, so-
It's possible we have multiple agenda items for the 5th of February, but it's all dependent on them actually getting us items. So we do have a rezone. We've got a couple things we're going to post this week for public hearing. So if it's not the 5th, then it would be the 19th, and we could do either of those and or both. And the other thing we could do is we could either notify applicants that we're going to start the actual agenda, 30 minutes in, so 6:30, or put it at the end. So we'll say we'll do the last 45 minutes or hour of the meeting will be dedicated to training, and then we just
Okay.
sit down together and round table it. So we're pretty open. We don't typically have very long, we haven't had very long meetings the last several months, so.
I think dovetailing it in, however, is great.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, I've written that note down in 2
Thanks.
places.
And thanks for the beautiful sweatshirt.
Yeah.
They're very nice.
Those turned out great. That Katie Gerard, our HR director, helped to find those, and they turned out
Yeah.
really nice.
Look
Yep.
better folded.
That's all I've got. Thanks.
thank you. Great thoughts. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, again, I a lot of lead up to this, but man, I just wanted to express my personal thanks to Commissioner Thomas. And this time was supposed to be his last meeting, and I've been serving with him on this body for 8 years, and seen him throughout town and stuff. And I just, not only was he's so smart in this area and so experienced, but he just really cared so much for North Ogden. I just wanted to kind of testify to that, like from seeing it firsthand and backdoor conversations that the public didn't see, that he was willing to walk away from personal gain and stuff to just really try to do what was right for North Ogden City. And I think, that blend of caring and expertise is almost irreplaceable. I don't know who's going to replace him, and I hope they come close. But man, that was just, I think, just wanted to thank Commissioner Thomas for that.
I
echo
second that.
Yeah.
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 Third.
Yeah. And you as well, Commissioner Mason.
It could be
you're
my last
up
meeting
for-
as well.
I know you're up for reappointment, and I appreciate all you've done over the last 8 years.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
Well, I hope it's not your last meeting.
It could be.
I second that
Could
too.
You've been a very valuable mentor to me, and I appreciate that.
All right, let's not get too mushy here. Any other comments from any other expressions of love from the planning commission? Okay. All right. How about from our city employees?
Okay, so I did want to do the same as Commissioner Mason. Thank you for making that, that thanks to Eric Thomas. So Eric Thomas has been here, appointed in December of 2011, 13 years that he spent on the planning commission, really dedicated. We have an excellent planning commission. All of you, I think, do a really, really good job. And I'm honored to be able to work with all of you, and Eric the same. So his time on the planning commission is done. He hasn't asked for reappointment or reapplied, and we'll see what other civic duties we can get him to do around the city. There's plenty of great things that we can do to rope him in. But
There is a
Yeah.
rumor the mayor's not rerunning, just
hey,
saying.
I've tried. I've tried
and
to get Eric.
and also just, beyond his time on the planning commission, Regency is one of those companies that we see does work in North Ogden. So we'll continue to see Eric Thomas. I know it as development continues to happen. We're 21, a little over 21,000 people. We're expected to go to 40,000 people. So lots of growth to come. And then Commissioner Mason, I have your actual city council appointment in 2017, but I think you began in 2016. So 8 years on the planning commission. That's a lot of time to be sitting here and processing these applications. And so thank you very much for your time and dedication. Regardless of what happens, I mean, if you're reappointed, you won't get a plaque this time. You'd get a plaque next time. But regardless of what happens, we will invite you both or whoever is not reappointed to the planning commission to a future city council meeting to be to be recognized by the city council. So I know that the mayor and council have also, several of those council members have been on for time while you've been planning commission member making recommendations coming up the line. So they want to recognize your time and effort and service. And we know that this is a pretty thankless job at times, and you are about as close to the public as you can possibly be in this seat or as a city council member. So just thank you. Thank you all for what you do. Beyond that, so John, our city manager, and I think you sit up here as city attorney. Is that right? You do a little of both. I'm not,
Yeah,
John wears all the hats all the
I think
time.
I'm actually the city arborist as well.
I think by code you are.
By code, I think I am.
Yeah.
So.
There's a tree that I parked next to. I'm serious. It was like I opened the door and it was scratching my truck.
Oh, man.
I need an arborist in the.
Trim it up.
And apparently a
But John had asked all of the department heads to think about 2025 goals. So as the council is beginning its budget process, they're thinking about our goals, and we like to see our goals and our work and how it affects and kind of rolls into what the council's overall goals were. So in that goal setting, I'll let you know what Ryan and I met with and we talked about. And I think your planning commission idea was excellent, and I put that in here as well. So we organize these sort of as like external facing goals. So that's with the public and the development side, and then internal goals with working with our departments. So external, one is that if you're a planning commission who wants to, quote, plan, this is the year to do it. We are going to get our general plan text update done. We have a state requirement to do a water wise or a water in the water planning in the general plan section is a new required section. That's both culinary water and secondary water. I'm sure you all know because you all drink stump water and, our aquifer water and our sourced water, but North Ogden is kind of unique almost in the state in that we provide 100% of our culinary water resources. We have 100% of our water rights for culinary inherent. We don't buy any water. We're not like a consumer of Weber Basin water or others for culinary services. And it's all basically straight out of the hill. You know, North Ogden, you poke a hole in the hillside and water comes out of it in weird places. So that's something we do need to plan for, make sure that we are staying ahead of growth in those high growth areas so that we have fire protection, reservoir sized correctly, water resources coming up. And then beyond that, the text of the general plan was last updated as a whole in 2015. So it's getting a little bit old at this point. I mean, you're on that like between 7 to 10 year range where it's time to update. Our future land use map updated in 2022, we will of course look at it as well, but I think that that's still an excellent guiding document for the city, and we are doing rezones and annexations based on it. The second is the mayor has expressed an interest in doing proactive economic development. And we've, as staff, looked at several different softwares that help us understand, you know, where people are going in our city, where they were, where they stop, and where their next destinations are. So it's kind of like a leakage analysis is what you'd call it. I think we could all agree that we need more sit-down restaurants. We need more after 5 p.m. types of services in North Ogden. And the software that we're looking at, if the city decides to purchase it and go with, will really help us drive some of those decisions and help businesses see how they align with the demographics of North Ogden. Title 11, our zoning code, you should see, you know, I've had a list, and then Ryan started putting together a list of our code corrections that we missed at the time that we put it together. And between sections that were kind of incorrect references, and we tried really hard, and we went through that thing several times, but it's so long, you just find them day to day as you're utilizing the code. And that's been a year and a half ago or so. I mean, Brandon Bell was still here, so we're going to bring forward a pretty healthy Title 11 update. And then beyond that, there's a few code sections that were dropped and or missed that we want to potentially reinstate. So the Planning Commission will consider it in 2 buckets. One would be those things that are kind of just like we dot and I's and changing references really easy. And then these are pieces that we have to actually consider what to do from a code correction standpoint. 2600 North Washington Boulevard, the commercial development there with Leading Tech is a critical component. From, you know, our mayor and council have expressed a lot of interest in that. And the city just wants to be as helpful as possible. And we treat everybody fairly as far as all developers, but this is one that we know will have a huge impact on its budget wise and what businesses we get. So just really working very closely with Leading Tech is a goal of ours, even with, you know, down to like monthly meetings and what our specific objectives will be there. For Planning Commission, those trainings, and you have the idea of doing like discussing hot button issues, economic issues, how you plan as the Planning Commission is the note I wrote, but we want to actually just set the trainings on the first meeting of the quarter, and we'll establish the training schedule up front. So I think that maybe next meeting we'll come to you with some ideas and you help us refine, yes, I'm interested in this. No, I'm not interested in that. But make sure that those trainings are just established and we know when they're coming. And then we're going to set up a standing monthly meeting for our technical review committee, which is your first stop in essentially almost all commercial site plans in any subdivision. And it's the first place they come. And right now they're ad hoc, and they aren't difficult to get together, but they include a large portion of the staff from public works, engineering, planning, our stormwater pollution or protection folks, people in the subdivision review. So we just want to have, this is the day, you know, once or twice a month, that plan on it on your calendar, and then we can cancel them as needed. But I think that having a standing TRC would be easier. On the internal side, we utilize a software called iWork, and Ryan has done so much training on iWork. We're just trying to optimize it. And then this turns out that it was the city recorder's goal as well, but we have now over 12 years, and then 12 years and older, 3 planning directors worth of file structures in our internal files. And it's messy. It's quite messy. So we have like everything before 2014 is sort of in one bucket. And then for 7 years, the stuff that Rob Scott used, and was done the way he liked to do it. And then from the time I started in 2021 to now, And so it's a huge deal for us to do file structure organization that won't affect the planning commission outside of just, it'll be helpful for us and we'll be faster and more efficient in getting information out. And then just generally, if you haven't been over to the old city offices and looked at the old area that is now a conference room, John's office, Ryan Santora's office and Joyce's office, it turned out really nice. And so we're finally, I think as an admin staff, we're at a place where we'll no longer have musical offices. I was almost in 3 so far in, 3.5 years, and I'm staying in the office I'm in. Luckily, John's been in several offices while I've worked here.
We were going to move Scott down near my new office and he just threw a fit and said,
I did.
I will not work next to him.
I have the best view of Ben Lomond in the city. I mean, it's gorgeous. You got to come and, stand in my office. I got double wide windows. So I wanted to keep it. Ryan got the big office because I wanted to keep my windows and view. But if you haven't been over there, it's worth coming over and seeing what has been done. And that was almost entirely done by the staff of North Ogden. So other duties as assigned, Trent Wilkins in the sewer department can hang a piece of drywall with the best of them. And those guys really knocked out an excellent room. That's a multi-purpose room. We will have the planning commission be in there, I'm sure, for trainings at times because it's just a great space now. And we want to just recognize the city for doing what they've done in the growth in the city with the admin building, but that we finally are kind of like home in our positions, I think. So with that, that's everything I had written down for the 2025 goals, and it's not set in stone yet. John's going to compile and then send out a list. So if you as planning commission see something that we've missed as a department, send me an email or we can talk about it now. But for next year, we will be doing a lot more, planning rather than approving like we did tonight in the administrative items.
Great.
Anything to add, Ryan?
No, that was really good. And I guess just there's those code corrections and then there's even new code that we've been discussing that's kind of come up with like building permits or questions we get from the residents. So really looking forward to just bringing those up and having you all share your opinion and having those added. So
You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the software?
Yeah.
Have you settled on one software? Are there multiple softwares?
There's a few different, there's one that for the last 2 years has been kind of doing demos with us and I'll let you know if we purchase it, what it is.
Okay.
If you're interested, I can tell you, I could show you a demo of it. We'll be doing a demo of it with the city council. So I guess it will be public information. It's Placer AI is what it's called. I don't know the exact source of data, but when you have your phone on with Bluetooth and you've accepted an app that says, we'll get to use your data, that's what their tracking is. And they can't track down to an individual, but it's extremely powerful data. I mean,
Yeah.
it can tell you that X percentage of users who were at Lee's, where they were before Lee's and where they went immediately after, where people are coming from. We've got hotspots around the region of places that come in. This Kroger store, this Smith's right here is the busiest one in the state, we've heard. And it was something like 3 million annual visits.
Yeah.
So it's just ridiculously busy. Prizes, I'll give it, chocolate to who can guess what the busiest day was for Smith's.
4th of July.
Who you'd think. John knows, but he already
I
got
November.
Thanksgiving.
New Year's Eve.
the day before Mother's Day.
What?
Hmm.
Kidding.
The day before Mother's
I
Day.
mean,
And that's because
I think
all
the
the,
men
I
up here
think
can
I
attest.
think
We're getting
all the
flowers.
families have been sent out to be like, you're making dinner tomorrow.
Maybe
So
you
then
won't.
they're like, well,
Yep.
I gotta
They're getting
figure out if we
dinner,
wanna buy a car.
flowers, cards.
Yep.
There you go.
Flowers.
So
Big
that
thing,
was,
isn't
No.
it?
but
No.
you can also,
I mean, actually, it is. It's huge.
you can grab parks. So you can grab parcel level data and say what parks are being the highest used. So there's
Mhm.
actually multiple ways to use this software. And I think that it'll help our parks departments to show us, where were people going and where were they going and where are they going after. And the number of people who jump from our like quick services to a sit down restaurant, like if we could just reach out and absorb Olive Garden, like that would be wonderful, because that's one of those high, places that people go. So targeting a business like that, and I think North Ogden, from a national chain standpoint, we are a destination community, right? Like you don't just find yourself here. We don't have a transit station. We don't have a freeway that runs through. So they're not looking at North Ogden unless they're trying to hit a specific demographic, but we have amazing demographics from like population per household, our general income per household, all these things. So with this software, we can punch it in and say, what are the most likely 10,000 square foot businesses that match our demographic? And it'll punch you out 10 or 20. And then you can start to reach out to them and say, hey, have you ever thought about locating a whatever it is
Yeah.
in North Ogden?
Does it have the option not just for national chains, but to say this is the type of restaurant? Because one of the things that I think North Ogden has had very good success with is local entrepreneurs,
Yeah, absolutely.
people who live in this area, and it's decades of examples of people who live in this area. If they realized, hey, this is something that would fit, you end up having kind of like an owner occupied,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, and people who show up there and they take pride into it. And I would even say simple things like our library is better because Arno did it.
Right.
Because Slade and I went there as a kid. And he would come down every day and he would look at those things. And so I'm not talking about favoritism,
Mhm.
but I'm talking about information that can get into the community and it makes a difference.
Right.
You know?
Bailey's
Yep.
would have done it better.
Yeah, they probably would have. But we're better off for the construction that Bailey's does in this area because they care just a little bit more.
Yep.
They do.
I mean, I think to build on that, and this is just kind of a question. When you gather this information and let's say the city is reaching out, does that get tied into like a request for proposal, or does that information become public for landowners in the city of North Ogden to use? Because I think to just in my short experience in, let's say, the restaurant industry, if you have a local entrepreneur, right, that they kind of know their niche in the market, which is maybe anecdotal, but they know, right? They got the vibe of the area. And then they know that Panda Express is willing to come.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean we bring Panda Express. It means that there are local entrepreneurs that go, you know, if they're willing to come, then I'm probably willing to roll the dice and open up I guess a prime example is there's a new restaurant down on 2700. I mean, it's in Pleasant View, but he went from a food truck to a standalone, dine-in restaurant. And it was totally like vibe, and brokers and everything didn't necessarily have, in my opinion, an accurate market analysis, right? They were trying to push their tenants closer to the freeway. But, with that kind of mess around the freeway, all of us would say, dude, that is not really a destination for this massive demographic. Go another 1.5 miles in, and that's, we don't really want to go down and deal with that mess, right? That's
totally.
kind of again, anecdotal, but it's true. But I guess what I'm saying is I've known national chains or clients, I guess, of mine who own franchises in national chains that didn't want to come, even though that anecdotal evidence was being pushed. But if we have this data, I do think that you can get a mix of chain and let those maybe be a little bit more of an anchor and then get that local restaurant. I think there's a nice mix, right?
Mm.
But I guess my question after all of my blabbering is, how do you plan on making this information public? Can a broker call? Can just anyone call? Does it become like a freedom of information request, where you request like a documentation? Like I just recently requested a phase 1 environmental review from the city of like West Jordan, right? Couple days, no issues. They sent it to me, but there was a formal process. So again, a food for thought. I'm just kind of wondering.
Yeah, it would be grandma-able through the government records
Okay.
request process. I mean, anything on all of our computers is essentially, and so any software that we pay money for to have that tells us these reports, like those reports would be grandma-able, and we could redact anything that was proprietary, I guess, like specific to anybody, but it's not going to give you a whole lot of real specific proprietary information. So to your point, Johnson, it could say what you're short on are sit down restaurants in approximately this size. And we could maybe outreach to the community and say, who's interested and willing, and we have a really great community in a space. But the powerful part to me, what it helps with is, in my past experience, if you don't do proactive economic development, you're kind of held to whatever your large developers are saying is or is not viable in the market. So for us, if nothing more, it could help us ground truth the front parcels on Village at Prominence Point or along Washington Boulevard or in Kings Plaza or with the Leading Tech development and say, you want X type of business, but we're saying Y. Have you show us how you've reached out to Y? Because I know that Leading Tech is using some sort of software like this. Like they're not just flying blind. They're out there trying to find and locate anchor tenants as well as those who kind of cruise along with them. Example, like if you get a Ross in your city, you're going to get a Payless that just sort of like comes in and filters around the outside. So there's businesses that flock together for sure. But it's two different jobs and outside of John, you correct me if I'm wrong, but Mayor Brent Taylor was very proactive economic development. He went out and was beating the bushes trying to bring businesses into the city. And I think we've had a period of time where it's been pretty reactive economic development in this department. And so it's two different jobs, and it would be a portion of time I would spend on it where it wouldn't be my primary focus, but we would actively outreach, talk to business owners, talk to when a for sale sign comes up on a piece of property, we would call that property owner, that broker and say, hey, what are you interested in putting there? And so it's not just up for sale and then we get another and I'm not saying financial institutions aren't bad, but we have a lot of them in North Ogden. So it's not just another financial institution that buys up a 1 or 2 acre piece of property, and we get the property taxes off of that investment, but we don't get sales tax revenue. And city budgeting is a 3-legged stool of the fees we charge, the franchise taxes, property tax revenues, and sales tax revenues. And the better we can balance that over time as we grow from 21 to 40,000 people, the better off the city will be.
And I would like to add on to that, I've dealt with other cities, planning commissions, all of that, right? And I think it was a little error on their part they were very interested, and I felt like it was a condition of approval to bring sales tax, right? It wasn't said, but it was implied. And then, talking with people and maybe getting my own interpretation of what they were really getting after. And so I would just like to add this just from experience. Sales tax is important, and I get that helps fund a city. But in talking to a couple people that were in the private sector, but also had worked at cities and had been that focus of the proactive economic development, your dollars, your community has X amount of free dollars, and it's assumed that those dollars are going to be spent regardless of where. And so when a city approaches, we get property tax revenue, but not the sales tax revenue. My evolved interpretation of that is the residents are going to spend that money anyway. Why shouldn't the city do what they can to keep those sales tax dollars or that dollar spent in the community? I go down to a local restaurant, they live in the community, they go and spend it at another. Yeah, there's sales tax generated, but there's a deeper, shop local, sort of thing. So anyway, that's just something that I think when I've been on the other end and cities have brought up sales tax, I didn't get a good vibe. And then further conversation, I then maybe understood more of the nuance of why they're doing that. It's not just a money grab. It's keep that in our city because we're great. And let's circle that dollar as many times before it goes to Chicago or New York to the franchise headquarters.
And we should also think about the money that we have as a collective set of communities, and we kind of operate as like North Ogden, Pleasant View, and Harrisville it's fixed to a certain degree. Like there's only so much money to go around, and economic developers, property owners, business owners recognize that. And you've got a huge amount of new business that's just gone in just west of us, right? And again, would love to just annex Rush. Let's just whatever we can do to just grab these existing businesses. But you might desire as a city I want another drive-through. I want another this type of business. I want another this type of business. And at times you just kind of, the market's like flooded or saturated and you have to wait, right? And that's a balancing act between what has come in a certain radius around you and what you can
Mhm.
continue to attract and grow. Because it's not an endless well of money that our communities have to just spend at every one of these restaurants.
But if we know those constraints,
Yes.
and we can start getting those things, I don't think anyone in North Ogden is opposed to waiting too. Like, I think people want good things to happen.
Yeah.
And and that type of rigor is welcomed. I think your goals for this are amazing. Looking at the software.
I see it as risk management. That is, I mean, I don't know if it's the city's purview or not, but the facts are the facts. If people have the information and they can look how many drive-throughs and how many Chinese restaurants and how many Mexican restaurants or stores or whatever, the residents or outside investors can mitigate that risk, because something that can happen if one business fails, it almost sometimes,
Perpetuates.
it's kind of like, oh, what's going on, So I think, the information that you would be gathering would be vital, and I would just be interested in seeing how it's disseminated to a standard mom and pop shop and also a nationwide brokerage firm. It would just be interesting to see it get used in market analysis data, because once someone picks it up, those get recycled and those assumptions are made, just like the Ross and Payless.
And some of this we've already done some of this work in the Southtown Commercial Center plan, right? We had a leakage analysis done, and that firm, Somas, who we hired through Wasatch Front Regional Council and spent $100,000 with regional money on that plan, did a lot of this work, and they did a lot of this analysis. So it's possible that our analysis just aligns. It's just a 2025 number on top instead of 2023. But everybody's software is a little different, right? And typically when a major chain comes in, what I've noticed is they know more about your community than you do, even if you've worked there for a really long time. Like if a huge box, if a Walmart or a Target is coming into your community, they've been looking, they know the market, they know that they're going to make money, and you were just the beneficiary of having the available space. And that's a much different economic development approach than what you're saying of, let's focus on local businesses. Like, I think that's one of the things that makes Kings Plaza so amazing, is that while it's not the most beautiful business area, it's a bunch of really good local businesses.
Yeah.
And I guess, can I say who did the sweaters?
Now you have to. It would be
for us?
awkward.
I mean,
I can say it.
we use
Jones.
We use Jones shirts and signs for all of North Ogden's embroidery, and we pay a fair rate. We just are another customer of them. And they are a great local business. Like, we don't have to send these shirts off to whoever to have them mailed back to us to do that. We pick a product and we deliver them over there. We know the owners of these businesses, they live in a community. And I want to figure out, one of the things I have been thinking about is, as those types of areas redevelop, how do you keep those local businesses? How do you get new, pretty, boxes, if that's what we desire, a new parking lot or new landscaping, new signage and lighting, but not run those local businesses out of business because the rents have to raise in order to cover those improvements?
Yeah.
Because and they're all over. We have really good local North Ogden.
Oh yeah.
businesses.
And it's a part of the fabric of this community. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I've learned things from people who are business owners in this community, even when I was a kid, being friends with their kids or in their homes, and like I think it matters. I think it really matters. Another thing that I would add is, because of Weber High and because of the North Ogden Pass, we are inherently connected to the Ogden Valley.
Yeah.
More than any other, more than Pleasant View, more than Harrisville, more than those other places. North Ogden is very connected, and there are major changes happening there.
Yeah.
And those things affect us, as evidenced by the comment that someone made the other day who lived in Liberty, comes to get their groceries down here, and they're like, I love seeing North Ogden City lights.
Yeah.
It's those things I think those are all things for us to consider in this economic development.
And that
Do we still have an economic development committee?
we don't. The committee has been disbanded, and the gentleman, the resident who was appointed by the mayor, who was doing economic development, and going out and having lunch with business owners and sitting down, is on a different volunteer. I don't know the right, I'm gonna miss the words.
He's
I mean,
Otherwise
he's
occupied.
otherwise occupied for a couple of years. So we don't have anybody appointed specifically to do economic development. Economic development is in my title, Community and Economic Development Director. But up until recently, I haven't been specifically told like your job is proactive economic development, because they are very different jobs. And so it's a different focus on reactive economic development or reactive subdivisions and processing of applications, and we're going to be helpful and provide great customer service, versus when we see a building or a piece of property go for sale, we call them and we ask, not only what do you want to do, and we want to help you get this through the subdivision site plan process, but who are you going to put here? And is that serving the city? And have you thought about, in addition to that business, these businesses? Have you reached out to them? For me, like, on a personal gripe, if I were to say it, and in my own community I live in, we have like 3 tunnel car washes that you can throw a rock from one to the next, and we just have enough, right? And those can be easy land. Like, you have an available piece of ground and they go up really quickly and they last a long time. They're profitable businesses. The city sees a minor property tax bump on the investment made in the property, and then we don't really collect anything outside of sales tax revenues on a few air freshener sales. So like, to me, it's mitigating things like that. If you have a developer coming in and saying, hey, the only thing North Ogden can attract is another this type of user, then the software helps us say, well, actually, have you thought about these things over here? Because I'm showing that these are actually productive uses in the city, and I'd like you to show us how that works before you just produce another application for something. So it's going to be interesting this year to see how that helps and how it goes. And I've done that work in the past, and it's exciting and fun, and it'll be a component of what I do. I still love just the planning work and policy work that we do. So it's going to be interesting.
This is a comment for John as much as anyone else. But, my 2 cents, since we're public forum, is I don't think there's anything more important that we could do right now than planning with this. And if there's ways with money and funding to make sure that the planning and economic development department has the resources that they need, I think that's pretty critical. And I would look at that as, a couple of things. One, we're at a very critical junction, whatever the right word is, of
Who knows?
yeah, both
Yes.
of where we're at with vacant land, where we're at with economic development, where we're at with the valley, what's happening in Pleasant View, where rates are and where home prices are, and where the percentage of disposable income is for the people who already live here. I think in addition to that if we do this right, North Ogden will be a better city. But if we also do it right, we'll get a return on that investment in planning probably tenfold, because income will come into the city in the form of sales tax or whatever, but we'll also have better services. We won't have, a 3rd car wash. We won't have a 6th auto parts store and a 7th bank, and so nothing wrong with those things, but like, those are important. We're just at a critical time.
But
So.
what you just said, I mean, we need the banks to give the auto loans for all the cars that we have, and the parts stores to support them, and the car washes, so that, John's got more cars
Okay.
than drivers, right?
I mean, there's a big balance between letting the private market decide and facilitating that. We still can't control if the 7th car wash comes.
No.
But I think what would be better is just for people to have that data,
Mhm.
right
And
there.
and maybe we produce an economic report of some sort that's for public consumption. These are types of businesses that the city is targeting, and not down to like, we're going to get this, we're reaching out specifically to this business who's a competitor of other businesses, but down to,
Right.
did you know that the city is really focused on and trying to get a sit-down restaurant? And let people know that, because that's something that the public might be able to kind of grab onto, and that we can show in our own marketing efforts.
And I think it'd be great to have like a quarterly report that just kind of, hey, guys, come to our website. There's a quarterly report. I mean, I don't go that often, but there's like pseudo, it's just a networking group. It's the Northview Business Alliance, and they get together down at the Pizza Pie Cafe, and sometimes it's the same businesses there, you know, month in and month out. But I think even information like that, because the likelihood of an existing business owner opening a second is just as high as someone taking the gamble for the
Absolutely.
first. So my only thing is information is key, but if it only ends up in the big boy brokers' hands, then we get another car wash and we get another bank, because that's, you know, the data is what's driving it. But if you can have someone walk in and ask for a business license or the process, and start that conversation and say, here you go, here's some information.
Yeah.
Which might be, hey, don't do this right now, man. There's like 4 coming.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good idea. So anyway,
Well, anything we can do to help you, Scott, you know, we're on board. So
Sounds very
that's
interesting.
exciting.
Okay, great. And then the last thing I'll say is on moderate income housing, we've updated our report, and we had to make another report to the state on that, or response to the state regarding our desire as a community to rezone for densities that will facilitate moderate income housing. And I think, you know, after I was really mad and off my soapbox, and John helped me rewrite my letter, I think we made a compelling argument that North Ogden, between, and even estimating all of the single family homes that not homes, but subdivision parcels that we have permitted over the last almost 8 years, in addition to the multifamily that we have, if everything were to suddenly pop out of the ground tomorrow, we're about 26% some form of connected unit in the city.
Wow.
And the state hasn't told us what's, you know, good, bad, indifferent, but to me, I think that's a pretty high percentage of our residential water connections being a shared wall connection, or an apartment, you know, that's an apartment, a townhome of some form, being over 25% of the city is, and that we still have lots of land left to both annex, and that's zoned and or could be rezoned to R4, our highest density zone currently. So I think we made a compelling argument that we're not the blockade in the market of what's stopping affordable housing. And that also, after the legislative process, after the rezone happens, we can't force a developer to spend $3 million to bring an apartment project out of the ground. So it decouples it from, you are entitled now to build something along these lines, or you have actually constructed it. And that was the argument made for the state, was that we have entitled it. We haven't slowed it down. We're here, and we process administrative applications just as quickly as we can for approvals. But looking back, the Planning Commission and the City Council has not turned down an upzone or a rezone request to R4 in nearly 8 years.
Yeah.
So we are definitely doing our part, I think. And I believe that the state will recognize that, and that it was just more data is always helpful. But that's approximately where we're at right now. So as you think about planning for future growth areas, we're about 26% of the city is some form of townhome, duplex, apartment, or other shared walled type of construction in the city.
And just as an example, I used to live in the city of Seattle, and the percentage of their land zoned single family was in the 70%. You know, a big city, right, has, you know, in the 70% of just single family housing.
Yeah.
And one of the issues that they're a lot further along in their urbanity, I guess. But one of the issues that was coming from the private sector was just upzone everything and let us decide. So they were kind of trying to put a Band-Aid on a problem that had gotten out of control. So the upzoning is actually pretty cool, because then it's like, hey, we did what we could do. We can't force you to build it, but you were allowed to.
Yep, you are entitled at that point.
Yeah, you know, you can't blame me for not letting you build X,
Right.
You know, and now 20 years later, your property is, you know, underutilized or not the highest and best use, but it was there. Because there's a lot of blame going on in my profession on the cost of housing being cities and zoning's fault. So I do think that is proactive big time for the city, just to get ahead of that one. Because that is going to circle back, you know, much like any other catastrophes we've got. Everyone's kind of pointing fingers. The housing affordability and the zoning, it's coming. It's a big deal.
Well, circling back to the software, and it couples into that a little bit. And this is your issue that you get all excited about, Brandon.
I have a lot of them. What is this one?
Active transportation.
Yeah.
But that software is not going to pick up active transportation in the same way. And I think I think we have information about what active transportation could look like. And that will very much affect how how viable these businesses are.
Sure.
And it's a really cool thing about our community that we can actually do that.
You might, the Placer software, and this is one of those like, you know, turn off all of your Bluetooth and everything on your phone because it's a suite of services. So it's like, even if you don't use the one, you're using another one, and that's all of these. I mean, all of this big data, right?
Yeah.
But I think they can actually, to a point, get people who are walking and biking based on speed of travel and distance of travel. So for active transportation, we may be able to pull out, like on our parks, what are the routes that people are taking at below 5 miles an hour to our parks? And then that might help us say, these are priority sidewalk areas. Like there's a bunch of
John's
ways.
drive, it's about 7 miles an hour. He's going to throw it all.
Very slow. It's very slow.
We're getting
Yeah.
up there. in
I'm
age.
faster on my
It's really-
scooter going down
He's a
2,600.
Huge bicycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting. And when I put the presentation together for the council, I'll bring it actually to the planning commission as
Okay.
well. But it's, at this point, we don't have a budgeted line item for it. So the council we'd have to figure out where in the budget it comes from. If we do it the remainder of the year, or if we start July 1, we'll build this into next year's budget. But I do want to, you know, we're already working with them to create the presentation that the council will receive on this software. So
Very fun. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
thank you all. Sorry to extend the time of the meeting.
John,
We have
did you
sandwich or anything?
you haven't looked down here in a while?
He wants
Do you
to go
like
home.
our sweaters?
Do. I've been actually
Okay.
I've been watching you put them on the camera.
Let's get dressed.
As per usual, I'm the last to the,
Trendsetter, guys.
No, it's great.
like
It's really good.
We like them a lot.
I'll make a oh, sorry.
I was going to say, now that I'm wearing 2 sweaters and sweating to death, I motion to adjourn.
You skip John though.
No, we
I just, thank you to Eric. I'm not giving Brandon any thanks because the mayor is wrestling with this decision. Just, and we do have one of the other applicants in the room. Just,
Welcome to the
But-
planning commission.
it is. Anyways, thank you to all who applied, and it's not an easy decision for the mayor because it's 5 really good candidates. So
Great.
yeah, it's good. What? I'm not saying
Motion to
thank
Either
you.
get your Wednesdays back or you don't.
I know, I'm
You
good.
know?
I'm really good. I tried telling him that, like I'm good. Like I'm good. Been a pleasure to serve with you guys and, yeah. Good luck. Yeah.
Somebody made a motion to adjourn, yeah?
Yeah.
We did,
I'll
Cody
second
did.
that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.